It's not just things like the person worked hard or the person's super competent. There are behaviors, there's norms, there's expectations you have that are very often unwritten. And I think the sooner you document them, the sooner you understand them, the better, because it influences future hires.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Culture is such an important piece to your business, but it changes over time. In fact, culture changes at certain inflection points relative to the number of employees you have. For example, when you have 10 employees, it's much easier to schedule a lunch than when you have 100 because not many restaurants would be able to hold 100 people, but they'd be easily able to hold 10. Your communication style will have to change as the company grows. Well, today we look at the inflection points of culture through a company that's reached 500 employees, give or take. And we have with us Todd Olson of Pendo. Pendo is an incredible platform. It's a cloud-based business that allows, increases and drives software adoption. Todd and I talk about some of the things he does inside a culture that is different now versus when he had 30 employees or when he had 150 employees, and some of the inflection points that are changing. What we look at is specific things that he is doing that you can learn from, that you can actually apply to your business. I go deep into some of those very tactical things that he measures and how he improves culture. You'll learn from Todd, who's been through many changes as his culture has evolved over time. So tune in to today's episode with Todd. Hey, Todd, how are you?
Great, Gene. How you doing?
Fantastic. Great to be here. Love your background.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've been on the show before, but I'd love for you to share with our audience again. Tell us a little bit about Pendo.
Yeah, absolutely. So Pendo is a cloud platform that helps other companies producing digital software to drive more adoption of it. So if you think about software either that our customers are using or we're using internally, we help measure all of the behavior, what people are using and not using. And then we combine that with the ability to educate and onboard and really drive usage of it. So it's all about adoption of software.
Well, I remember our conversation before was about core values, and I'm sure that's still a central part of your company as it's grown to 500 employees. But a lot of things changes with culture. So today we're really going to focus on kind of the different milestones or maybe the moments where you felt tension and you had to shift the way you saw culture through your growth through to 500 employees. So I'm going to let you kind of go back to where you want to start. Where was it easiest in culture?
Well, definitely easiest is really tiny. So there's the first inflection points around 30, but before that, look, when you're below 20 or 30 people, you can make a lunchtime reservation and you can all have lunch together. I never forget the time where we looked at the number of humans we had and we're like, oh, what restaurant's going to hold us? Right there is a shift because it means that you're going to have to do smaller groups. You're going to have to start rethinking the way you build deep relationships. But, those original people, most of which are still at the company, by the way, 6-7 years later, I have really strong bonds with them. Now, one of the sadness is now at 500, those are the original people. I see a lot less. It's just the makeup of change and things such as that. But yeah, I think that the first inflection point was 30-ish. That's when we're hiring enough people where we actually had to really write down our values. Like when you're original, we had what I call aspirational values. Those are things that we thought we wanted to be like. After a couple of years and we had 30, 40 people and we started hiring a bunch, we started noticing, oh, this person wasn't a values fit, or, oh, this person is a values fit. So then after the 2-year mark, we sat down as a leadership team and revamped our entire values. We rewrote them, reworded them, added some new ones, removed one, all based on how we were behaving. And that's been kind of our set since then. But yeah, I think that's been an interesting dynamic. I think I carried us that 30 to well over 150, 200. I think there is a gap there where we're doing a lot of things right when it came to values, but now at 400 to 500, I think we're starting to see new challenges emerge. I think international has played a big part of that. I think we've got now offices in Israel, UK, 2 offices in the UK, and now Japan. I mean, I guess it's very, very different, and those countries culturally. So we're kind of fully international. That's a big change that we're working on absorbing.
Well, Todd, let's go back to 30 again.
Yeah.
A lot of people would think less than 30, you don't need to focus on culture that much. But I think you feel differently about that. What would you go back and tell your younger self about under 30 employees?
Start to understand what behaviors are right and which behaviors are wrong. I mean, we have people leave the company even under 30 people. Like, why didn't it work? That's the question you want to understand. Or why is someone like, oh my gosh, that person feels like they belonged here since day one? Like, write it down, look for the common characteristics. It's not just things like the person worked hard or the person's super competent. There are behaviors, there's norms, there's expectations you have that are very often unwritten. And I think the sooner you document them, the sooner you understand them, the better, because it influences future hires.
Your style of leadership, was it different than it is today at 30?
I mean, my actions are, of course, incredibly different. My style, a little different. Yeah, look, I think that's one of the greatest things about my job is it changes frequently. So I'm always learning new things. I can't behave the way I was at 5 or 10. I was much more hands-on than I am now. I think the thing is, I have to assume at our size and scale that a lot of things are happening in the company that I had no idea what they actually are. And the sooner I accepted that, the better I felt, because trying to know everything going on, and one, it's near impossible task. Now I still describe my style as hands-on, but that's probably a misnomer, because when people think hands-on, they probably think I know everything that's going on, and I definitely do not. And I'm totally okay with it. I'm assuming that the people beneath me know when to get me involved in things and when not to. And every once in a while I'll discover, maybe I should have involved in this and I wasn't, or you don't really need to tell me those things going forward, because you sound like you guys had it covered. So I have to, inspect and adapt every once in a while and tweak, but that's part of growth, and every once in a while, I was in a meeting this morning where talking about something, I was like, I had to get involved in it. And in the future, I don't want to have to get involved in it, because I think you should be able to handle it. And look, I didn't get involved a lot in it. I spent a couple hours working on something, but that's a couple hours I in the future want the team to figure out ways in which to, okay, what did I do and how would you do that before I would have, so I don't have to do anything? So I try to ask those types of questions. Yeah. And I think, so if I'm doing something, something's wrong, right?
Yeah.
That's a great way of thinking of a CEO.
When you have 500 employees, it's when you have 500 employees, it's hard for you to help everyone with their individual problems.
Yeah. And I'm hiring people that are honestly better at their jobs than I am, as experts. So if I'm doing something, something's wrong. I should be not having to do people's job for them.
I want to kind of go into the inflection point you said around 150, 200. I typically see it around 100 employees. I don't know if that's just a round number, but it was a little bit later for you. Why do you think that inflection point was so deep into your growth?
I think because we were investing so much in values. We had been very fortunate to set up peer recognition systems pretty early in the company's history. We have a ton of feedback loops around weekly pulses, or people say on a 1 through 5 scale how they feel. Quarterly EMPS. We've been doing that for years in our company's history. So I think we've been so deliberate about it and so intentional. I think it's helped. I also do a one-on-one with every employee after the first 90 days. That's helped. I still do that, by the way.
Let me put a spotlight on a couple of those things. The peer recognition, we've talked about that before, but let's just give us the brief, the way you use peer recognition inside your companies.
Yeah, so we have 7 core values, and we encourage people to tell stories when they witness those core values being lived. They have a kind of a process where they can call someone out publicly. It gets posted to our Slack messages. People can pile on if they see it's all the same thing and kind of add up. And then each person can recognize one person per value per month. And at the end of every quarter, we tally all the numbers up and give out awards. People that were the most honest that quarter, or the most transparent that quarter, or the most customer focused that quarter. So it's a way to just kind of highlight and tell stories. I also take a story per town hall, which is every other week, and spotlight it. And it's not just spotlighting the person who lived the value, it's spotlighting the person who recognized the person for living the value, because recognition is so important. But for me, this is critical because it helps scale appreciation, I think everyone wants to be appreciated for what they do. I mean,
I had
really
shared
basic.
with you a story before I cut on the recording, and it's absolutely free. Costs no money to encourage recognition across the peer network. You may give awards that may have some monetary value to it, but that's just you kind of reinforcing what you want more of. But this peer-to-peer recognition is absolutely free. When you also mentioned a weekly pulse. Give us an idea of what that looks like.
We ask people how they feel every week, 1 through 5. And as a management team for years, we used to talk in length about people that were below 3, just kind of searching for pockets of, hey, maybe this department feels unhappy, or maybe they're a little stressed, or maybe like there's more pressure there than they want. That's been a really, really useful guidepost. Now, I will say it's something, if I'm fast forwarding today, it has been harder to maintain past 450 than it was at like 150. I think it helped us get through that time. 450, it's hard again for some reason. I don't exactly know why, but we're actually just diving into it. But we've seen usage of that system go down, and also I think it's, there's a lot of new people. I think it's hard.
And then you also mentioned the quarterly. I said NPS, but is it really NPS?
NPS, yeah, employee NPS, yeah. How
so
much?
You might need to explain that to some people, because not everyone knows what NPS is. So give us your best definition.
Is a 0 through 10 scale question, which asks how likely are you going to recommend? And the eNPS question is specifically for us would be how likely would you recommend Pendo as an employer? And the way it works is that 9s and 10s are promoters, 7 and 8s are neutral, and then 6 and lower are detractors. And you take the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors, and you have a number. So the neutrals all fall out. We've been measuring that on a quarterly basis for years. Now, the overall number, kind of meaningless. I mean, I know what it is, of course, and we do look at it, but what we really use is the department by department numbers, the office by office numbers. I mean, I can tell you, Gene, I've seen some turnarounds that are like exciting. Like Israel, we bought a company in Israel. We bought the company, the eNPS was somewhere in the 30s. We made some leadership changes, and honestly, I was pretty confident making those changes. I'm not going to lie. And then eNPS dropped. We started losing people. Attrition went up. eNPS down and went to like -20. So it went from positive 30 to -20. That means more people in the office would not recommend than recommend. That's not a good thing. And I had some troubling like trips there. Like really, really was debating what to do. But then it just took some conviction that, hey, we did hire the right leader, and I like what he's saying, and he's got to give him some time. And happy to report, as of our most recent NPS survey, and at the end of the quarter a few weeks ago, they're positive 85, 50 points higher than the original. And like that, that's measurable. Like it feels like, and I can tell you, I felt every peak and valley on that one. So like these numbers reflect reality. Like, and that's just one office's story. It's a positive outcome, but we use these scores pretty religiously in our company. So
I love to talk to my own clients about how they make something intangible like culture and make it actionable. And what you're actually talking about is you're identifying which teams are performing. In this would they recommend that others to work there, and even the pulse things. So this is something you really believe helps you to be a better leader, to give you insight across numbers of teams, right?
Yeah. Look, I mean, one of our core values is transparency, and I was looking through the verbatims from eNPS. They're all anonymous, so I can't see who's writing what, but I see the ones tagged as transparency, and there'll be some example, this thing happened and the company didn't quite understand why. And I'm reading it, and it's like, that's interesting. It's interesting to help me understand, well, we should have like communicated these things a little better. We should have been more crisp on this. We should, a lot of this is like, it's good feedback, a lot of it I take to heart, and it helps shape the future. Things like compensation. You'll see certain teams have more questions around compensation than others. Okay, well, maybe our benchmarks are off for that department. That's something we can take to our people team and like, hey, we're seeing this. It can't be random. Can we look at this in more detail and do something about it? So those are the kinds of things that we use all this data for. But I think it makes us stronger.
Hold on for a second. Todd just talked about transparency. He actually mentioned it a few times. It's one of their core values. Let me give you a little insight around transparency. everybody has a transparency line. That is where you believe you should be transparent and where you shouldn't. And when I talk to fast growth company, that transparency line is way far skewed to the other side of what most companies feel like is right. What I mean by this is fast growth companies are very transparent. They actually love to be able to share their numbers, their financials. They share openly strategies. They really do want people to understand and feel included inside of what's going on in the organization and not excluded. And if you're not transparent, you really do run the risk of excluding people, and that really damages their sense of ownership and their feeling connected to the overall vision and mission of the company. Now, I bring this up because you want to make sure that you are as transparent as you can be. And if you're not transparent, you won't be able to create that working environment that people love and that perform well in. So with that, back to Todd. Now, Todd, we've gone through the inflection points of 30 and 150. Now that at 450, you said you're feeling that inflection point again, and that's coupled with what you've seen through COVID and what everything that's changed here. So what are you focused on now as it relates to culture?
Well, I think we're revisiting our values. Not wholesale, we're going to get rid of them, but we kicked off a process a few weeks ago where we're going to take a hard look at are each and every value serving us? Are there some unwritten values that we should add or maybe codify more strongly? I think COVID, you go back to the beginning when we're all able to go to lunch. Now no one's going to lunch anywhere ever, right? So like I find that what that's translating into is just the relationships we have as a team are more strained. They're weaker. They're being challenged more than they ever have been before, and it concerns me. And I mean, also you don't meet anyone. It's kind of hard to really understand the intent behind some of the behaviors. Like you're not getting the passion, the feeling through on Zoom as much as you are face to face. So it's a challenge, and this world, this last 12 months, I've also seen an increase in divisiveness in the world around us, and it's started to affect the company. I'm politics coming in. That actually politics was one of our top items listed in our EMPS survey. Some people don't like it at all. Some people like it. Some people think it's one-sided. I mean, like everything you've ever imagined. Like in the history of the company, I've never had anyone complain or even comment on it. And now it's a theme, like an active theme. So that's an area where we're trying to wade through and understand how to and we've been around, this is our 7th year. So more than one election year. So like, this is not the only time we've been through this. So that's an interesting dynamic. Now we're a lot smaller when we went through the prior election year. So maybe we're trying to understand if that's the phenomena that we're now seeing. And that's a very US centric view, of course, because the rest of the world is on a different cadence, but that's one thing we're considering. But yeah, we're seeing people argue and bicker specifically over mediums like Slack and other chat channels, much more so than before.
About non-work stuff.
Mostly non-work things. Yeah. And it's one thing to like share news, like, hey, I saw this article. It's another thing to kind of take a little step further, a little step to the negative side. And yeah, I think it's also symptoms of the world around us. I think we're relatively quick to judge these days. And it's quick to judge everything from politics to your opinions on COVID and like how and often you wear a mask or where you go. Do you go to a grocery store or do you not go to a grocery store? People have almost religious opinions about this. Yeah. And they differ. And yet we're all part of one team. So I think I've been stressing this notion of we're a team, and it doesn't mean we need to like be best friends or religiously believe in everything, but it means that we have to operate together to achieve goals. But I think there's something missing in our values. That's my belief. Our values must be missing something or we wouldn't have these issues. That's my bet.
I can see, because I know how important the values are to you and the organization and the impact it's had on as you've grown. One last question here, Todd. You measure, seems like a lot of stuff. Do you measure anything within your own leadership and how you're expanding as a leader?
Measure. I can't say that I have a quantitative measure. I can say that I invest in myself. So I'm part of a CEO coaching group. It's a group of half a dozen other CEOs. We meet quarterly. I have a coach as part of that as well. I think within that process, it's pretty disciplined over me listing out my top priorities, things like that. I mean, is there a metric for me? I grade myself on a quarter of how I think I'm doing. I typically have myself kind of there's like green is, excellent, blue is solid. I mean, I typically consider myself doing a fairly solid job. I mean, I always feel like I could do better, but I don't think I think we're hanging in there. Like, so that's my only measure for myself. But it's self-graded. Yeah. So I haven't surfaced anything from our employees. That could be an interesting measure, how well they think I'm doing. So we ask about leadership in general, but not about me personally. So,
well, I appreciate you sharing this with us. One last question. You mentioned the CEO coaching group, and we don't need to plug any specific groups, but what is the real value that you've got for investing your time and money probably into being a better leader through a peer-to-peer group?
Well, there's two facets. Of course, it's independent perspectives on your business. And this one, because there's like 6 other peers, they all have different perspective, different backgrounds, different ideas, what works, doesn't work. So being a CEO is very, very lonely. Like, unless you've actually sat in the seat, it's kind of hard to understand and have empathy for what it means. So being surrounded by people who have empathy, like, it's easy to give advice when you're not doing it. It's much harder when you're doing it, because you realize the various challenges. So I think that's one helpful. The second thing, actually, just as much as me getting advice on my business and what I'm doing, giving advice helps me grow as a person, because as I'm forced to say, okay, what advice would I give this person? I have to be intellectually honest in saying, am I doing the same thing? It's one thing for me to tell someone else, hey, I'd do this, but the question is, am I doing it? I think that two-way style is very, very useful. So look, it's like it's like anything too. It's like checking in too. The nice thing is, by having some consistency, people know what I did three months ago, so they can check in. How's that thing going, Todd? Like, keep me on. It's almost like your New Year's resolutions that people post on social media because they want to make sure they're held accountable.
Yep.
It's a way to be held accountable in a safe way, not like your board holding you accountable or investors holding you accountable. Of course, they're going to hold you accountable. That's their job, my job. But this is like another way to hold accountable, independent of that.
Todd, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights on culture and leadership here with us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Gene.
Fantastic conversation with Todd. I really love him talking about culture and those inflection points. Hopefully you took notes. Hopefully you really understand how you could measure culture, and you can make some very specific changes just by doing a few different things differently. Well, we also talked about his group coaching that he's receiving through being a CEO of a fast growth company. Well, we didn't get into the specifics of what that group was, but I do have a group. If you're considering joining a peer-to-peer group with other CEOs or founders of fast growth companies, then I'd love for you to take a look at Fast Growth Boardroom. It's something I'm really excited about bringing to you. Exactly the same reasons that Todd said that they're valuable. I'll share with you some of the real key points of this. When you have a peer-to-peer group, they will challenge you to see different perspectives. They will challenge your own thinking so that you grow beyond just what first comes to your mind, what really does work in other companies. We also see where you could actually let go of some beliefs and things that have to be reframed and shifted so that you can actually continue growth. You'll see your blind spots, the places where you sabotage yourself through these conversations. But gathering with others that are like-minded and that you can trust is really a valuable way for you to spend your time and to grow as a person, as a leader, and as a CEO of your company. We create these moments where you can really grow faster. You get private coaching inside our groups, Fast Growth Boardroom. So all of this combined, you will get value from this. If you want to find out more about it, just go to fastgrowthboardroom.com. You'll find more details about what it is and it's a fit. When you think of growth and you think of culture, make sure you think of growth thinking. As always, leave courage